Finding Common Battlegrounds is an attempt by two brothers, one conservative, the other progressive, to have civil conversations about politics with a little help from their friends.
Welcome to Finding Common Battlegrounds. This is the podcast dedicated to civility, finding common ground through civil debate and just like highbrow debate, right? So we're going to be talking tonight about Joe Rogan, and is he out of control? Does Spotify need to shut him down because of his medical misinformation? But first, I want to talk about our sponsors. Our sponsor, which is Lux Bidet. If you haven't done a bidet, then you should try it. It's very sophisticated and civilized. So if we're all fans here, we all like.
You don't do a bidet. The bidet does you.
Yeah.
I think Lux has its new slogan.
And then we have our debaters. Let's talk about our debaters tonight. We have Josh Cragen and Ryan Cragen. They are brothers raised together in Utah, but have since grown apart into polar opposites politically. They're still on good terms, but they weren't always. Yeah, there was a time when
that's why we're doing the podcast, people.
Yes,
we've learned to talk again.
Exactly. Their politics tore them apart, which just like it's tearing apart our country, but they've learned to find common ground. So Ryan is a liberal college professor, and the other is a self-employed entrepreneur. So the conservative, religious. So yes, they're on totally
sexy
opposite ends of the spectrum. How many kids you have, Josh? Four kids. Ryan's going with one.
One and done.
We're surprised he even had one, right? Mm-hmm. And that was through asexual laboratory reproduction.
Yeah, basically. Josh is laughing really hard because he just said that my son is just like me the other day. Just today.
Man.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was playing a video game with him, and I thought I was playing with 12-year-old Ryan. It was so weird.
You're like, flashback.
Yeah, it was weird.
So if you're new to this podcast, we are going to talk about a point today. Again, the medical misinformation, and each of the debaters have presented 3 points, and they're going to try to get the other side to agree with them. They get brownie points for every time they can get the other side to agree with their point, and we see what kind of debate and how much we actually have in common. So I'm always surprised at how much we agree upon at the end of the day. And so let's get into it. So today, again, Spotify was sent a letter by 270 doctors urging Joe Rogan to stop, right? It's based on medical misinformation that he's stating. And they said that he's making false and societally harmful assertions. And one doctor was saying he is a menace to public health. Joe Rogan is a big podcaster, probably the biggest podcaster, not vaccinated.
The biggest.
Yeah.
He's the biggest media entity on the planet.
Yes.
He is.
Massive following, right? We threw his numbers around last time. I couldn't remember what they were, but
11 million viewers per episode.
Yeah, which is that just like blows most of the networks.
We're closing in on him. Come on, we are not that far behind Joe Rogan.
We have 11. He has 11 million. But, he's not vaccinated. He did get COVID last year, and he did take ivermectin for it, which many doctors say is ineffective. But I did want to state, so there are been some others. I haven't got the full list, but there was a number of other people who have been shut down or blocked, suspended for medical information. There was Ron Johnson was shut down from YouTube. He's a Republican senator, and I'm trying to think. I didn't verify this, but I had heard Marjorie Taylor
Greene. She was
was shut off of
Twitter.
Yes, for the same medical misinformation. So
yeah.
Again, so this is social media platforms are starting to regulate this, and it's really a question of, so like I do want to talk about the broader subject, right, of regulating medical information, but we have for this specific subject, we're talking about Joe Rogan, but I'm assuming we're gonna go into like the kind of the broader subject. Without anything I missed, Ryan, Josh, that's worth adding to like the general background before we get started?
I think we'll get to it.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're good.
Cool. Well, then let's jump right into it. We'll start with Josh's question for Ryan. Ryan, would you agree the attempt to censor Joe Rogan is not for COVID misinformation, but it's actually for what the left perceives as promoting vaccine hesitancy?
Okay.
This is an important distinction. Okay, those are two different things, because COVID misinformation just means you were wrong about COVID, right? You said something that you thought was accurate, but you're wrong. Has Biden been wrong about COVID?
I'm sure, because I think everybody's been wrong about COVID.
Okay, multiple times, right?
Yep.
Biden said all sorts of crazy things. My favorite was when he said he has claimed in the past that if you are vaccinated, you can't get or transmit the virus. Is that accurate?
Well, we thought so at first, but that's certainly not the case anymore.
It's misinformation. Okay, that's wrong.
Yeah,
it's wrong.
Well, it's wrong.
Has
now.
anybody
I mean,
else?
Be fair. Like, we did think that at one point. Now we know that's not true.
Some people thought that,
yeah,
but it was wrong.
It is wrong now to say that.
It's more effective, but it's not 100% effective, right? And
right.
Yeah.
But Biden claimed it was. Has Fauci been wrong about anything with the virus?
Like I said, everybody has been wrong about the virus. This virus has changed and mutated through its course, and we didn't know a lot at the beginning.
And we've learned more. Yeah.
Yeah, we've learned a lot.
Have any of the news organizations been wrong about the virus? Has CNN been wrong about
Everybody's been wrong about the virus.
So why are they going after Joe Rogan? Why are they saying censor Joe because he's wrong when they're not saying censor everybody else that was wrong?
Okay. Keep going. Or are you ready?
It's because of this distinction. No, let me just say this. It's because of the distinction. They see this as vaccine hesitancy. He's telling people not to get the vaccine, which is actually not accurate. He has stated several times on his program, do your own research, and if you think it's good, get it. I'm not saying don't get it. Okay, and if I don't think neither of you listens to the Dr. Robert Malone podcast.
No.
Okay, let me read just a couple excerpts from there. So Dr. Robert Malone, it's important to understand who he is. He's one of the premier doctors in the world when it comes to vaccines. He's a vaccinologist. He is directly responsible.
It's not a real
he
thing.
And a couple.
A vaccinologist?
That's what he called himself.
That's not a real thing. A virologist.
And this is the podcast that's really the subject matter of this letter, right?
This is when the 270 doctors came at him, okay, and tried to get him removed off Spotify or whatever they're trying to do. So Robert Malone is responsible for the technology that we use to create vaccines. Okay, he's, from everything I could see, this dude's legit. He knows his stuff. So he was being interviewed by Joe, and that, you know,
so as a vaccinologist, he like helps develop.
Let's get it right. It's a virologist. He's a virologist.
That's not what he called himself on the podcast.
Okay, if he said he's a vaccinologist, that's not a thing. That's like legit not a thing. He's just making stuff up. It's virologist.
Okay. He's the foremost expert in this field of creating vaccines. I think he can call himself whatever the crap he wants.
I would strongly debate that too.
All right, I'm Googling right now.
I don't care. Maybe I misheard him. I'm pretty sure he called himself that. I mean, what's wrong with the term? You can surmise what he means from the term. It's not that hard. Okay, regardless, nobody that I'm aware of is disputing this guy's bona fides. Okay, or do either of you have a problem with
vaccine scientists?
I'll go with that.
But
who cares? Why are you guys so freaking worried about this?
Because it's weird. It's fine.
It does remind me of Elon Musk. What he has that title, right? It's tech guru or whatever, master tech guru.
Yeah, some weird
which
title.
is like just doesn't mean anything, right?
So what? He's Elon Musk. He can make it whatever title he wants.
Well, right. Yes.
Okay. So this guy's responsible for the technology that they currently use to make vaccines.
That's a bit of a stretch, but he contributed. No, it's not like one person was like, I invented the whole thing.
He's an expert in the field, though.
Yes.
He's an expert in the field of messenger RNA. I'll grant that.
Okay. And that's we're using
what's being used
mRNA
by Pfizer and Moderna to make it. Yes.
Okay. So he knows his crap. So to break down 3 hours of podcast, he said several times, I'm not telling people what to think. I'm just putting the information out there, and you need to decide. He himself is vaccinated. Okay. And in the podcast, he just gave examples of where maybe you should doubt what's going on. But he never said don't get the vaccine. But because he's just putting out there, like I'll give you an example. He talked about Israel. The people in Israel are very compliant with whatever the government says. And Israel has an agreement with Pfizer, where that's the vaccine that they all get, and they're on their fourth jab right now.
They're starting their fourth round. Yes.
They're on their fourth jab right now. And he said they looked at some of the data, and all the surrounding Palestinian states have a much lower death rate right now than Israel. And he said that's worth noting. And Joe said, well, what are you saying? He tried to get him to like say Pfizer's screwing it up or something. And he said, no, it's more complicated than that, because you can look at the other stuff. The population in Israel is older than the surrounding
exactly.
states.
I was about to say they're way older, way older.
So it's complicated. Yes. So all he's saying is look at these examples. Here's the information. Make your own choice.
Yeah, but that was pretty intentionally misleading.
No, I mean, because he came out and said, look at all these examples. I'm not going to tell you it's wrong. Look. So maybe there's something to look at.
Well,
so he did that for 3 hours, and this is why people are coming after him, because he's and what the left calls promoting vaccine hesitancy. They hate that because and it's weird how stringent they are about this. If you promote vaccine hesitancy, they will come at you with lock, stock, and barrel. But if you're just wrong or you lie like Fauci, but you're still pushing vaccines, they don't care. Right? So that gets back to my question. And let me just I wrote down 2 quotes from Robert Malone in this podcast. He said, to make informed decisions, people should have access to the data. Informed consent is being actually blocked. Do you disagree with that?
Say that
again. To make informed decisions, people should have access to the data. Informed consent is being actually blocked. Okay, so what he's referring to is the vaccine is being pushed on people. And if you don't have all the data, is that informed consent? I don't think it is. I can't disagree with that. I want all the data. I've been vaccinated. I just got my kids vaccinated because that's what the data looks like to me. But how can you disagree with that? He just wants people to make their own decisions based on all the data. And the left hates this because it's not in lockstep with their orthodoxy. Okay, let me read his second thing. If my voice can't be in the conversation, who can? I don't tell anyone what to think. I give them information and tell them to decide for themselves. Okay, so he's one of the foremost guys in the world on mRNA technology, and they don't want him in the conversation. That looks like propaganda to me, because science that you can't question, what is that, Ryan? That's propaganda. Okay, that's all that is. So there's the dissenting voice there. It's not even a dissenting voice. He's just saying, look, there's other facts here. Look at it. I'm giving you the information, and they're trying to shut him up. They're trying to platform him and Joe by extension.
So Ryan, do you think that they're specifically targeting Joe Rogan because he's questioning and he's not on board with the vaccine, no questions asked train.
Yeah. Because he's okay with people getting the vaccine.
Right.
He's said several times,
I'm
not a doctor. Yeah, he's not anti-vax. And that's
we're going to talk about Joe not being a doctor. He's not an expert.
Sure. He says that all the time. That's the crazy part. He says, I have a quote here he's saying, don't take my podcast too seriously because I'm not a doctor. I'm a freaking dirty comedian. A dirty stand-up.
Yep, he is.
Right.
That's true.
But the left is holding him up like he's on some platform saying, I am the doctor.
But Josh, didn't you start out by saying he has the biggest platform? Yeah. He has a freaking huge platform, and people listen to him, and people accept what he's saying. So if he is saying stuff that's not accurate, That is a problem.
Back on. I want Ryan. What do you think? I'll keep pushing you.
Yeah. So I have something else that I want to hit at, but I think Josh's point is it's not so much misinformation. He's making this weird distinction about misinformation versus vaccine hesitancy. And that's why they're going after Joe Rogan, is because they are pitching him as being vaccine hesitant.
Yep. They don't care if people get it wrong, because everybody's gotten it wrong. They don't try to censor those people. They care if you say anything that would lead people not to be vaccinated, or to even question it.
I think it's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it that way, and that, because you're right, everyone has missaid something, but they're targeting him specifically. Is it that I'm interested to see how you answer, because I actually think it's an interesting argument.
I think I'm struggling with this distinction that you're drawing between misinformation and then vaccine hesitancy. So let me just kind of see if I can clarify this, and I will answer the question. I'm trying to get there, but I think I need more information to answer the question. So I think it's different to say that somebody's providing misinformation once we have better information, right? So if it's, let's say, May 2020, and the virus is just getting out, right? So it's now spreading in the US, and we know very little about it. And then I say, like, well, I think once you get it, you probably can't pass it on. If I say that in May 2020, and then 2 years later, we find out that that's not true. Yeah. Like, I don't think that you can say that's vaccine misinformation or medical misinformation when I said it 2 years ago, and now I'm like, actually, that's not true, right? So like, I think there's a clear distinction there between like, I didn't know and I thought something, because that's kind of common with lots of other diseases, and clearly I was wrong, and I admit that I was wrong. But if we have information that's like clearly establishes that that's just not true, but I'm still telling people that, then I would say that's misinformation, right? So like,
if you're knowingly misleading people,
yes,
but he has his own
that's
sources
misinformation
that he's looking at, saying no, that this is worth looking at.
Okay. But can we agree on what misinformation is? Because you made it out as though like everybody has always been giving misinformation, when in fact a lot of people were giving what they thought was the best information at the time.
What Joe Rogan is
doing.
And
then when we got more information, they changed, or they like, okay, that was wrong. Well, we've moved on.
Let me give you an example. And we know Anthony Fauci lied. We have his correspondent saying
I know
lied.
You love pointing this out when we already agreed that it's happened before.
Okay, but so listen, I've heard them say he lied, but like, what did he say? What did he do?
He wanted more people to get vaccinated, so he lied about what numbers we would have to reach to get to herd immunity, and he said they were way lower than what his literature said they were. And so he told other people, yeah, I'm lying about it because I think this will get more people vaccinated.
He said it needed to be higher. The threshold needed to be higher than it.
He said the threshold needed to be lower than what it really needed to be. He was trying to get people along to get more vaccinations.
He's trying to downplay the plausibility of your herd immunity, saying, no, that's not a good, that's going to be really hard.
With the intent of getting more vaccinations. And nobody on the left has any problem with that deliberate misinformation. That's deliberate misinformation.
Okay. One, that's
nobody
a
is calling
statement.
to censor.
No, it's a blanket statement. Who said nobody on the left? I don't agree with that. I would.
Who on the left has called to censor Fauci, or has called for his resignation?
Who with a platform has called for that?
Yeah.
Because I don't agree with that. I would always give people the most accurate on that ground. Look, I have really big problems with how all the media depicts Fauci. Okay. They keep saying that he is America's leading virologist. That's not how science works. Okay. That's just not how science works. It's not like there is one person who is the expert.
Knows more than anyone else.
Yeah. No, there are probably 5,000 people on the planet who know as much or more about viruses than Fauci. Right. So I despise. Well, I don't know how many, right? I'm just saying, like, there are thousands of people who know.
We agree.
So when people depict him that way, it drives me bonkers. Everybody's like, oh, he's the leading virologist in the United States. No, he's not. He's just a guy who happens to be fairly educated about this. That's great.
But why? How come these 270 doctors didn't try to censor Fauci when it's proven, verifiable, false, intentional misinformation? but they don't care about that. They're just going after Rogan. And he's doing exactly what you said. He's giving the best information that he has. He's not intentionally lying to anybody. He's the most popular media personality on the planet. He would lose his platform like that if he was proved to be lying to people. He's giving the best information that he has. But the left only cares about his misinformation. They don't care about any of the other things that people have gotten wrong.
I'm not sure.
Agree, Ryan?
That they're going after him because of vaccine hesitancy. So implicit in that, and maybe you'll make this explicit in a later point, but implicit in that is like complicity with Pfizer. That like Pfizer has bought the whole left-wing media, like you want to say, right? So the media is all left-wing.
Podcast.
They're in the they're in the pocket of Pfizer, and so they just want everybody to get a vaccine because vaccines are the answer for everything. And I'm not sure I buy that, right?
It's not. That's an oversimplification because Dr.
Okay, but
Malone
that's
kind of went
implicit
into
in
that.
the market. And that's implicit in your argument is like all the left cares about is everybody getting vaccines. But why would they care about that?
The left has been pretty pro-vaccine, right?
Let me read this.
And the right has been vaccine hesitant.
So this is from Dr. Robert Malone. I wasn't going to get into this, but I thought it was really interesting. In that podcast, I was typing as I was listening to it. So he's talking about mass formation psychosis. And this is what happened in Germany in Hitler's time. You had the most educated people on the planet. And what did they do? They went crazy. They turned into Nazis, right? This is the most advanced country on the planet at the time, and they went crazy. So he said, when you have a society that has become decoupled from each other and has free-floating anxiety and a sense that things don't make sense, we can't understand it, and then their attention becomes focused by a leader or by a series of events on one small point, just like hypnosis, they literally become hypnotized and can be led anywhere. The people identified as their leaders that promise they can fix this pain, they will follow that person through hell. It doesn't matter if that person lied to them. The data are irrelevant. Furthermore, anyone that questions that is to be immediately attacked. They are the other. This is central to mass formation psychosis. And this is exactly what happened after the podcast. Joe Rogan and the doctor were attacked.
The doctor said this?
This was
you're quoting what he said.
Yeah, I wrote that down after the podcast. So he listed that as one possible cause. He talked about some of the complicity with Pfizer, and the government has given hospitals financial remuneration if they can identify, if they have a COVID patient, it's like $3,000. If somebody dies from COVID, it's like $30,000. So the hospitals have financial incentive to not treat things before they get to the hospital. I mean, he just went through a whole list, and he never said, there's like a big conspiracy or anything. He said, this is just the data that I've seen these studies. Look at it. Just look at it. He never made any accusations. Like, I'm making more accusations than he did.
Okay.
But they still attacked him.
Ryan, okay, I want to get to the next question. So yeah.
So can I just give one last point in here?
Did you agree? I don't even know if you did.
No, I don't know that I agree on this one. And okay. I'm sorry, Josh. I don't know that I agree. One last point. 30 to 40% of Americans can't read a table or a chart, like a bar chart or a pie chart. 30 to 40%. And you're saying what we need is the data thrown in front of people so people can make their own decisions. Okay. When they can't read a table or a bar chart or a pie chart, I'm not sure throwing data at people is the most effective.
Is this adult Americans or is this like kids?
That's adult Americans. That is adult Americans.
We're in trouble.
Okay.
Can't read a pie chart. I don't know if
they can't read it. It's true, right? Sure. Which is kind of shocking.
Probably true.
Okay, so implicit in what you're saying is there are government officials that should be making these decisions for people.
Okay, let's try this. Do you know any people? Do you know any people who you believe are probably just not capable of making all of their own decisions for themselves? Not including kids. Let's talk about
mentally handicapped people, but fully functioning adults. Sure.
Or people that are we all know someone.
We all know some people who are struggling. Like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So should Joe Rogan be making decisions for them?
He's not. He's telling everybody to make their own decisions.
And they're not capable of making their own decisions. But they're listening to Joe Rogan.
According to who?
And he's...
So Ryan,
let me read this
you're
quote.
making the case that we could. I mean, I agree. It's like look to what's the word I'm trying to say? A trusted source for information, right?
But who's the trusted source?
Right, exactly.
I'm going to get to this.
That's my first
Fauci,
point.
or
this is my very first point. So
well, let me read this one quote just to address that. So in the White House press conference, I think it was just yesterday, Jen Psaki, she is the worst. She was asked this question: "Who does
you
the
can't,
president?"
You can't start it
Poison
off.
the well.
Yeah, exactly.
Jen Psaki, she's the best. She's so charismatic.
Thank you for sweetening the well.
She was asked, "Who does the president think knows best for students, school board members, or parents?" And her reply was, "The president believes that public health officials have the best guidance on what we can all do to protect ourselves, including teachers, administrators, and students." So what she's saying there is, you don't know what's best for your kids. That is the problem with this. That's basically kind of what you're saying, Ryan. There are other people that know best. You don't know what's best for your kids. Screw you if that's what you're going to try to push on me. Okay, that is freaking bullcrap. Jen Psaki doesn't know my kids. She doesn't know their needs.
She didn't say she's the expert. She didn't say she's the expert.
Okay, so who's the expert that is better at parenting my kids than me?
No, that's not what she said.
Okay, who's the expert that is better at healthcare for my kids than my wife? Tell me, who is it?
A medical physician who's trained in pediatric care.
Like, I can bring up examples of both sides where that's wrong, right? Where the medical expert is probably better than this parent, but in this case, the medical expert isn't, right? The parent is more in touch.
Yeah, exactly. So who gets to decide that? That's the question. And I'll get to that. All right, go to Ryan's question.
Yeah, Ryan, you're definitely right. There are people that need some hand-holding through life, through their medical decisions, through whether they should, through a pandemic. I agree with that. But who is that source, right? So I think you're gonna talk about this. Okay, we're gonna Josh. Can we agree that we should listen to experts even if we are skeptical? Right.
This is literally like a response to his first point. I love that we didn't plan this at all, right? Like this is completely not coordinated. But all right, so I'm starting out with a broader point, but we'll slowly work up to the main question for today about Joe Rogan. My first point is that we need experts. There is a growing move to dismiss experts and expertise movement. Of course, this is really selective, but it is still terrifying. What do I mean? I'm guessing most people who get on a plane want someone who is an expert at flying that specific plane to be at the controls. They would probably freak out if once everyone's on board, they were to hear over the speakers, "Congratulations, Steve Johnson in 4D. You're the lucky winner today and you get to fly the plane." Okay. I think we all want experts to operate on us. It'd be awesome until y'all die. I think we all want experts to operate on us or perform.
I would want to fly the plane, but as soon as my kid was picked, I'm like, oh, frick.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I'm not a big fan of college degrees, except for certain, my doctor. I do want my doctor to have one.
Which is exactly what I'm saying. We all want experts to operate on us or perform our dental procedures rather than random strangers pulled in off the street. But there are also people who now question these same experts. The pandemic has made it clear that some people reject the expertise of physicians. Others reject the expertise of epidemiologists and so on. And yes, I get, and we've had conversations on this podcast about how that has gotten complicated. Lots of experts are being rejected by people who think they know better, which in my opinion is code for I'm so freaking arrogant, I think I know as much as experts, and I'll reject their expertise as I make my own decisions. When it comes to which lipstick to buy, fine. I don't think we need an expert to determine what lipstick for you to buy. But when it comes to the benefits of vaccinations or whether the climate is changing, those expertise rejectors are idiots, often committing the logical fallacy of argument from ignorance. If I don't understand it, nobody does. I get that this point is pretty self-serving. I have spent decades getting an education and continue to learn new statistical techniques and read lots of very technical literature to build my expertise in my areas of specialization. I would consider myself an expert on a handful of topics, a handful, very small number. So yes, it is a little self-serving, but aren't we all specialized in certain areas, which is why we make the money that we do? Both of you have expertise that generates your income. That's true, right? Like you are experts in what you do,
yes,
and that's why you get paid to do it. If you not anybody can do exactly what you do it because you have expertise in this. So coming back to my point, can we agree that we should listen? I didn't say follow. I said listen to experts, even if we're skeptical. That's my only point.
But that actually proves my point, because if you're just saying just listen, absolutely. That's exactly what Joe said. That's exactly what Dr. Malone said. You should get all the data and make your own decision, but of course you should listen. And what you just said is interesting. Not 10 minutes ago, you said, how many people are better experts on virology than Dr. Fauci?
I don't know about better. I just said they're equally qualified. Thousands.
Okay.
I know some personally.
He's the one setting the standards, right? He's the one pushing out the legislation, or not the legislation, the standards.
CDC is doing that.
Then what's Fauci's job?
Fauci's job is basically to work as an advisor to the president. That's it. Okay. That's his job. Right. He's an advisor to the president and then becomes a spokesperson. And I don't think he should be in that position.
And they're advising the whole country, right? So yes,
they are.
So I get your point, and I understand. And I agree with it. I agree. We should listen to people that are experts in their field. But it's obvious that this has become so politicized. You've agreed that COVID's been politicized right from the beginning.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to just make a carte blanche statement that we should listen to these people because they're qualified experts. Are they?
No.
Is Fauci?
Well, he is. I think we can establish he is an expert. There are other experts. And so, I get that there's disagreement. That's fine. I don't think everybody can even comprehend that, but that's fine. I think you're right. We should listen to lots of experts. Tom, jump in.
Josh, so sounds like Josh agrees with you, but he feel like it supports his point which
is fine.
And that's kind of, this is interesting because what your statements were saying, if a layman, it's dumb for a layman to reject an expert's opinion if they don't, because they can't understand it.
Not always. There's variation. That's the point. There's variation in intelligence and knowledge and all of those things. Some people probably can't make their own decisions. Lots of people can. And if you're capable of making your own decisions, an informed decision where you can actually read the original literature and understand what it's saying, great. Props to you. Make your own decisions.
Right. No. And I think what we have here is what we keep having is, I agree with you. It's like the layman's like, I don't understand it. I don't get it. It's stupid, right? It's like, no, that's dumb. That's not, you shouldn't do that. But what we keep finding is, it's something like 97% of climate scientists agree that, that the climate's changing and that it's man-made. Right. But you have this 3%, right? That are like, well, we believe we have some other theories, right? And right, this vaccine sicentist he clearly has some different opinions, some dissenting opinions, right? And they're experts, right? So you've got experts that are opposing, and so I think they get platforms, right? And then it's not a unanimous messaging or narrative, right? So
this is the problem, and this is what we're discussing today. Obviously, Dr. Robert Malone is an expert, and they're trying to censor him. Okay, so Ryan is right. We should listen to the experts, but the left is going, well, we should just listen to these experts because they're the ones that we like.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm saying.
Let's listen to all the experts,
because there's always going to be a dissenting expert, and how much do you give them, right? How much I don't know. That's weird, right? It's like
you should. Here's a quote. Let me read this quote.
Let me just tell you, if I listen to YouTube podcasts about that the Earth is flat, and we had a geologist that was telling me about it, and I watched 5 of them, I'd be like, they all that seemed pretty convincing, right? Exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point that I would want to make here is, okay, let's say that 90% of the experts are taking one position, and Joe Rogan platforms the 10%.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to bring up.
Not saying that what he's doing is wrong. Well, hold on. I'm not saying that what he's doing is wrong.
Everybody.
I don't think that's true. But just hold for a second. Yeah. Okay. I'm not saying that Joe Rogan is wrong in platforming the 10%. But has he platformed the 90% too?
Yes. And that's why people watch him. He platforms both sides on every issue.
Does he platform them 9 times as much as the 10%?
And
because if you make this, this is the problem with climate science or climate change deniers. They get 1-to-1 when it's 97-3, right? But they get 1-to-1 attention. And that makes it seem like there's a lot of debate over some of these issues, when in reality, most of the debate is already over. It's largely decided, but you give them a 1-to-1 and it makes it seem like it's equal.
I can see Joe saying, well, they're getting the 99% right now. They're getting it every time they turn on CNN or NBC. Like no one's hearing this 1%. I'm going to give voice to this platform. I can see that. I can actually see that argument. But yeah, it's like how, it's like, should you preface it of like, this is not the general opinion, right? This is very much the underdog or outlier.
If your arguments are so good, won't they stand on their own? I mean, do you really need to preface it by saying, no, they're the 3% minority? So Joe said this in that podcast. I wrote this down. He said, the only way to find out if someone's controversial opinions are valid is to talk to them and ask questions. Yeah. I mean, that's an oversimplification. There are other ways to find out. But maybe
science,
talk to them.
Test it. Investigate. Gather evidence.
What a freaking arrogant answer.
How is that arrogant?
Answer? Why can't
you're criticizing?
Because why can't I talk to somebody and find out what they believe?
You can do that all you want, but that doesn't mean that they're right.
That's what he's saying.
That doesn't make them right. Say it again, because that's what it sounded like. It sounded like
the only way to find out if someone's controversial opinions are valid is to talk to them and ask questions. So
that's exactly what it is.
Why
are your opinions valid?
No.
How you determine that is not by talking to somebody. That's absurd. That's absolutely asinine, Josh.
Oh my gosh. No,
you don't determine if somebody's opinion is valid by talking to them. My opinion is that there's a dragon in the room with me.
What is he saying?
Talk to me.
What is he saying?
But you're gonna sound like an idiot though. I kind of agree with what Josh is saying, and to a second point, we've learned over the years that scientific studies often get funding for one side or one narrative gets funded more than another side, and you can kind of dictate the science to a degree, but so I agree. If the guy's a fool, you've seen videos of flat earthers. Yes, flat earthers talking, and you're like, you're an idiot, right?
What? This is what Joe Rogan does. He has friends that are flat earthers. He brings them on the podcast, and he lets them talk, and then he usually makes fun of them because it's absurd. But he gives them a platform, and I don't know why you're reading into that.
I gotta show you
what he's saying is very clear. If you want to.
Kanye West, he has Kanye West on his podcast, and Kanye's like, and we're gonna do this, and he's like, you sound like a crazy person, and he tells him he's like, you sound crazy, and Kanye's like, what? Well, yeah, but I love that he called it out. It was kind of funny.
Okay, when you censor people, when you censor these crazy people, and you don't let them expose themselves to society, what do? They go underground and then they cause problems.
This is my next point. This is literally my next point.
All right.
I don't understand why you're criticizing Joe Rogan for saying that.
We got to go to Ryan.
We got to go to Josh's point.
The question for Ryan. Ryan, okay, right. So Josh, you can weave whatever you want into this. Let's see. Ryan, would you agree that the people attempting to censor Joe Rogan have no credibility at all?
Okay, so I'm specifically referring to the leftist media and the 270 doctors that sent this letter to Spotify.
Why is that in air quotes? They are doctors.
No, they're not. They're going to read doctors. This.
Okay, let's see.
Less than half of them are doctors. Let me read this. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Joe Rogan has repeatedly spread misleading false claims on his podcast, provoking distrust in science and medicine. That's the letter that they wrote to Spotify. This is not only a scientific or medical concern, it is a sociological issue of devastating proportions, and Spotify is responsible for allowing this activity to thrive on its platform. So then you have all these liberal outlets. So I'm just going to read a couple of the headlines they put out. So The Guardian said their headline was "Menace to Public Health. 270 doctors criticize Spotify over Joe Rogan's podcast." Forbes, doctors, scientists petition Spotify to stop Joe Rogan Experience. COVID-19 misinformation. Rolling Stones, a menace to public health. Doctors demand Spotify puts an end to COVID lies on Joe Rogan Experience. New York Post, Joe Rogan is a menace to public health. 270 doctors.
Josh, what's your point? Spotify. What's your point? Come on, get to it.
Why do you get to read for 20 minutes with your stupid
Because you're just repeating yourself. You're literally repeating yourself, Josh. You're repeating yourself.
I'm showing you that it's not just one source. If I only give one source, you cry, that's not empirical data.
You can give 5.
Then if I give you multiple
give me 27
sources,
of the same thing. Come on.
Shut up and let me read this. A quick inspection of the letter's signatories reveals that the majority are not legally permitted to practice medicine unsupervised, while a significant number are not even direct medical providers. The range of credentials among the signatories include 82 medical doctors. Okay, so there's 82 doctors, 5 doctors of osteopathic medicine, more than a dozen nurse practitioners, 100 PhDs and PhD candidates. I'm a PhD candidate. You know what? I could get a PhD, maybe.
Yeah, that's not what that means. But okay.
I know. I'm trying to make fun of this because it's so silly. Veterinarians, a dentist, a psychologist.
I heard there was an engineer.
Physician's assistants, a biochemist, master students, research associates, pharmacists. A bunch of people that have nothing to do with it. Teachers, engineers, social workers, a podcast host, and then there was a cannabis farmer with a high school diploma who they removed from the list because that was too much. Okay, they're not doctors. There's less than half of the people that signed this petition are doctors. So they're claiming misinformation when they themselves are misrepresenting themselves in this letter. Freaking ridiculous. They have no freaking cachet to be doing this. Absolutely ridiculous. And they're crying about misinformation.
Well, did they call themselves 270 doctors, or did
they did not? No, they did not.
Sure.
The media called them that.
Right.
That's literally. I've got the letter up right now, Josh.
Right.
It does not say 270 doctors are doing this. It says literally this is in their petition. We are a coalition. Reading? We are a coalition of scientists, medical professionals, professors, and science communicators spanning a wide range of fields. They don't say that they're all doctors.
Right. Hey. So it's the media that took that.
The media took that and flipped it into 270 doctors. So you're basically saying the media has a bias and they're using that and they're doing misinformation just as much as Joe Rogan.
Of course I'm saying that. I've been saying that ever since we started this podcast and you keep denying it. No, that
is misleading.
Well, the media is being misleading.
Yeah. The
people who signed the petition, this open letter, they did not mislead anything. They were open about their credentials.
And that's what I figured happened.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, Ryan, Josh, any supporting?
I would give you 50% if you say the media are being misleading. Fine. I think the media are being misleading. But I don't think the people who signed the open letter are being misleading about this.
Well, you're saying,
I can keep reading about
Josh, you said they have no credibility.
They don't. I mean,
what do you mean they have no credibility?
So there's 80 doctors.
That's the question.
And a couple other people that might be experts in some.
I am actually a doctor too.
Right.
Yeah,
I am a doctor.
Do you have expertise in COVID? That's the question.
No, I don't claim any.
Do these people have expertise in COVID?
Yeah, many of them are PhDs who are also virologists, just like Robert Malone.
Many of them. Okay, so 200 people, and they're the ones we should listen to because they agree with the narrative.
I don't know anything about any of these people. All I'm going off of is their credentials, and credentials don't always mean what they should mean. I know people who have PhDs who probably shouldn't have PhDs. So I get that. You can challenge those kinds of things, right? Like that's fine.
Okay.
But
what is it?
It's a bunch of people who are saying, hey, we're raising questions, kind of like Robert Malone.
So
we should listen to experts.
You don't
raising questions.
You don't agree, Ryan?
I don't agree that the people who signed this letter have no credibility. I think the media misrepresented what was going on a little bit, and this is getting blown out of proportion by my fine brother here, who's making it out as though all of them said that they are experts in virology and all MDs and PhDs.
I'm saying if you're going to call somebody out for misinformation, maybe be above board.
Okay, but that's the media that did this, not them.
I don't know. I don't agree with that. But
all right. We're gonna move on. No agreement. All right,
I gave him partial agreement.
He gave me 50
because the media were being misrepresenting.
50 is better than I thought I would get on that one.
Josh,
just the hypocrisy there.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
Josh, can we agree that censoring content should be a lower priority for the major social media platforms than simply minimizing the spread of misinformation? So let me repeat that. Can we agree that censoring content should be a lower priority for the major social media platforms than minimizing the spread of misinformation? Ryan, what do you mean by that?
I'm going to explain.
Better explain that, because I don't agree.
So recent research suggests, and this is, and I'll talk about where it's coming from, that deleting or censoring misinformation posted on major social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube is not the optimal approach because it pushes it into the dark corners of the internet where it cannot be moderated. This is literally the point Josh made earlier.
This was what, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Keep in mind, I was very precise in what I said on major social media platforms. The same is not true off of those platforms. The study by the Royal Society, which is one of the oldest scientific societies, not that age matters, that's a logical fallacy too, but the report is called Online Information Environment, argues that better approaches to addressing misinformation involve: one, using algorithms that minimize the spread of misinformation; two, extensive fact checking with messages and flags next to bad content; and three, information literacy efforts for all adults. The benefit of not removing the content but minimizing its spread is that the people who post misinformation can still see their post, but it doesn't go anywhere. If that is done, the people who post their garbage won't realize that it isn't spreading. This isn't technically censorship, since they can still post. It just reduces the spread. The drawback for the big platforms is that they make more money when content goes viral, so this will hurt their bottom line. In effect, what this argument in this report is saying is, don't keep them from posting, just use your algorithm to make it so they don't share it, so nobody sees it, because this is how Facebook works, right? You post something on Facebook, Facebook determines whether you get to see what I posted. That's the way that the algorithm works. If they know that it's misinformation, they just don't share it on anybody else's page, and then it doesn't spread.
And
so this report,
you're saying, I did read, I was watching a couple of videos that was talking about like how misinformation spreads extremely fast.
Yes.
And you're saying that the platforms are incentivized to allow
because
it
makes them money.
Right.
And this came out when there was a whistleblower for Facebook, right? Who was like, they love viral content because it spreads really fast, gets lots of clicks, that gives them ad space. So they make a lot of money off this. So that there is a disincentive on their part to stop this because that's viral content that makes them more money. But the point is, if you let people post and if you know that it's bad information or misinformation, don't deplatform them, right? That I'm literally saying, don't deplatform them. That's the argument that these people are making. Just minimize the spread. Thus, my point of like agreement. Can we agree that censoring content should be a lower priority for the major social media platforms than simply minimizing the spread?
That is one of the dumbest arguments you have ever made, and it refutes itself, because in your question you're saying they're censoring. Okay, they're admitting to censoring, but then in your explanation you said it's not really censoring because the people think they're posting, but they're actually not posting because we're blocking it from everybody else. So it's not really censoring. No, that's absolutely censoring people. Okay, you're just making them feel better about it because they posted it, but you're censoring people. That's a ridiculous argument.
Can we agree on what censoring is?
It's like turning down the megaphone, but not turning it off, right?
You didn't turn off the megaphone. They still get to post.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the volume is. You're still blocking ideas that you disagree with. End of story. That's what censoring is.
But it's their algorithm. These are private companies that get to determine their algorithm.
I'm not saying it's illegal for them to do that. It's immoral for them to do that. It's foolish for them to do that because they're still going to foment all this distrust, which is what's happening right now. We don't trust any of these people because they are actively censoring people, and you seem to be okay with that. In our other podcast where we talked about media censorship, and I talked about how Google is obviously censoring things, you had no problem with that, and that still to this day blows my mind that you have no problem with that kind of censorship.
I don't think we are we misremembering this?
But I think we both
agree that censorship is bad.
I've seen some posts. I was reading an article about that. I thought it was a tweet on Twitter that it got flagged with, and it had like a little
they have like
above it that said like, "Hey, warning! This has been flagged for misinformation" or something like that. And so it seems like that's happening, where they're allowing the post. You can still see the post, but it's
flagging it.
Yeah.
And they're saying that that's more effective than actually just deplatforming people or deleting the posts. And that's literally what the report is saying. And
I
that's
kind of
what I'm
agree
agreeing
with all
with.
that. Yeah.
That's what I'm agreeing with. Like,
you can still seek it out. You can still hear it. You can still listen to it.
But you have to look for it instead of it getting delivered to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Oh, that's terrifying. That's absolutely terrifying.
That's literally what happens right now. Why are you on social media then just get off social media? Because it's literally how they work. They decide which ones you see.
If it wasn't such a handy way to
to see all my posts about Soylent Green.
Oh, you and your posts. Which
no,
it's terrifying.
Posts are hilarious.
I'll get to why it's terrifying with the third point.
So Josh,
I stringently disagree. I mean,
I thought I was going to get for a hit on this one. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in practice, it's probably more effective to do it the way Facebook is doing it. But it terrifies me that Facebook has that much control, that these private entities, individual citizens that we didn't vote for, have that much control over the narrative. That's terrifying to me. These people should not have that kind of control. They're geeks.
They're private corporations that can do what they want.
Yeah. You're
using their service for free.
I would say this: if I had a platform, or if I was a person and I was spouting off whatever, and Facebook was like, "Hey, would you like to be suspended, or would you like to have a flag put by your post?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'll have a flag." Right? I think I would. I assume everybody would. I don't know. I think I
talked about this in the last post. The majority of people that get flagged or suspended off these platforms are conservatives because they're run by liberals. So if you don't agree with their take on things, that's when they start to censor you. And maybe they are right, like on the COVID stuff. Maybe they are. They probably are more accurate about the COVID stuff. It doesn't matter. The point is they're censoring people that they disagree with. I just don't understand how that doesn't terrify you, because right now the left is in control of the government and the culture war, but it's swinging back to the right in both areas. The right is going to take back over the government soon, and we're starting to win the culture war. So you're okay with censorship now because your side's. We can talk about that.
Next topic, Tom. Who's going to win the culture war?
All right, but you're okay with it now because your party's in power, so you agree with the censorship because they're saying what you want them to say. As soon as our party's in power, you're going to see how foolish that was, because you will be deplatformed. You will not have a voice.
Awesome.
I do not understand.
To deplatform? My Soylent Green post is going to get deplatformed?
All right. I think Josh gave some degree of agreement on this.
10% maybe 10%. I gave
2%.
All right.
2%. Wow. Jeez. There's like no agreement today.
This is kind of shocking.
Moving on.
I know.
Closer on this one.
Now I'm confused.
It should be Josh's third point.
Josh's third point for Ryan. Okay,
this
Ryan,
is such a good one.
Would you agree that censorship is stupid, and that anyone that believes you should ever censor someone for anything other than fomenting violence is also stupid, because fundamentally they have no grasp of the importance of the First Amendment nor any basic understanding of human history, and said people should probably be dragged out behind the woodshed and beaten within an inch of their lives?
Isn't that fomenting violence?
Yes, I'm glad you caught the inherent joke there. I mean, I've already kind of touched on it. I don't understand.
No one should be censored, is what you're saying.
There's a reason that the First Amendment was put there first. Ryan, what is that reason? Because you do believe in the freedom of speech. So why
We've debated this? That's why we agreed. We agreed on almost everything when it comes to freedom of speech.
So why are you okay with any form of censorship? That's what I don't get. Touch on that, and then I have a quote for you.
So in my last point, right, I really don't see that, because they're private entities that get to determine their own algorithms, right? That, like, they already do this. Like, literally, this is what they're doing.
Sure, it's not illegal.
It's
we
not
could talk
illegal.
About if it should be illegal, but it's not illegal.
That's a different question, right?
It's not morally right, but it's not illegal.
Well, what determines what they're going to put in front of people right now? It's basically what's going to make them money. And I'm going to get to this in my third point. So my third point is really kind of, it's like we agree, but we're just using the wrong language today, right? My third point is basically saying the same thing that you're saying right now. If somebody is saying something that could get people killed, okay, not necessarily fomenting violence, but literally could get people killed. This is getting to my third point. I think it behooves some of these mega social media corporations to minimize the spread of that information.
And I don't.
And that we can disagree on that. I'm okay with disagreeing on that. I think that's where I'm drawing the line, and that's what I'm going to get to with my third point. So for me, because they control the algorithms and they don't, those are all proprietary anyway. If they want to change those algorithms to minimize the spread of misinformation, literally bad information, that's up to them. And I don't see that as censorship. I see that as them doing what they want to do as private entities.
But it clearly is censorship. It clearly is.
Then they are entities that just engage in censorship. That's all they do.
Do you think that justification that the lives are at stake has been abused?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you for being honest about that.
There was did you watch the Bill Maher thing about I'm done with masks thing?
And just recently,
it was like a couple days ago.
Bill Maher or Bill? He said Bill Maher. Bill Maher.
Sorry, Maher.
Bill Maher. No, I haven't seen that, but I've been done with masks for a long time.
He's basically like, I'm done and I don't want to do it anymore, and I don't want you telling me to do. And so he actually, it was really interesting because he had like this liberal guest on, and she was saying, I hate to even say this, but they're saying, cloth masks aren't even effective anymore, this and that. And he's like, I'm going to get reamed by my neighbors for saying this, right? By my liberal friends, because, and I think she was saying like, this is a narrative that we've kind of been like true to. And then he got blasted by Whoopi Goldberg, went on, was like, how dare you, this is about lives and stuff like that. And it was interesting, right, to see like, they're like, how dare you, this is our, and I wonder if she was like, how dare you because lives are at stake, and how dare you, like, this is our narrative, right, kind of thing is what it felt like, right? Yeah. Like you've
That's exactly what it was. You're not towing the line anymore. This is our narrative.
That's kind of what it felt like. And
that's exactly what it was. And that's the lady on Bill Maher. That's what she was admitting. She said, I was towing the line. I was all in for 2 years, but I can't do it anymore because it doesn't make sense anymore. And I'm done. And we're not, this is no longer an emergency. You can't have an emergency for 2 years. That's what she was saying. She's no longer towing.
Did you see it?
The leftist. I saw some highlights from it.
Yeah.
I didn't see the whole episode.
I didn't either, but yeah. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, it feels like this was a great opportunity to be like, you can't argue against this. It's, lives are at stake, right? So get on board, right? And
that's the feeling on the right, okay? Is that these people just want to hold on to power. Fauci is making a lot of money off this. So, of course, he's going to prolong it as long as he can.
And I don't think the intentions were ever bad, but, well, power. It's power. And there's always
it's power. These people have power now. Why would they? Who gives up power voluntarily?
This guy.
You're the saint. Who else? Who else besides you?
I don't know. Nobody. You have to.
Nobody in government.
No, you have
government
to fight
doesn't give up power. That's literally what government does. They take power. That's what they do.
It's a very cynical take on government. But okay.
Let me read this final quote to sum up my take on the whole thing. By Thomas Sowell, who is a genius. The most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is best. Okay, who gets to decide what gets censored? Now, you can talk about your scientists and your experts, great, but and I agree with your point. We should listen to the scientists and experts. But what I see happening is the people in power, whoever. They only want us to listen to their scientists and experts. They don't want us to listen to Dr. Malone because he's the dissenting voice. He doesn't fit their narrative. So they are trying to decide what is best. And my politics always comes back to you should decide what's best. That the primacy of the individual is what the West was founded on. That's what has made us great. So when the government or anybody else tries to take that away from you, where you no longer get to decide what is best for you, that is when we spiral down the rabbit hole. That's when we lose everything. Who gets to decide what's best? I think you should decide what's best. So be informed, and that's all that Joe Rogan is doing. That's all Robert Malone was doing. They were trying to get information out there and say, you decide. And people on the left hate that. That was kind of my closing statement. I guess I should have prepared a nice closing statement.
Yeah. Ryan?
I'd give you like 70% agreement, but I'm going to hold the 30% for the people who really are not informed enough to make their own decisions. And you know what?
Should be censored.
Well, no, I'm not saying that those people, the 30% should be censored. I'm saying, like, we've talked about freedom of speech before. Like we both agree, we absolutely value freedom of speech. I want everybody to have freedom of speech.
Unless they're wrong.
No, even then, like, I don't have a problem. I will fight for the right of racists and bigots to be able to say what they want to say. Like, I absolutely agree with it, even though I think that they're horrendous in what they're saying, and maybe even awful people. I totally agree that they should have the right to say it. Where I draw the line is if somebody is saying something that, and I get Tom's point is completely, and I already agreed to it, right? I think the violence thing has gotten taken a little bit far. So if you're fomenting violence, that's a problem. If what you're saying could get people killed, I think that's a problem. Now, that's gray. I'm not going to say it's a black and white line. It's a gray line, and we can debate that. Otherwise, I don't have a problem with people. The flat earthers, who are they harming? I couldn't give a crap about flat earthers.
Themselves.
Right? They're idiots.
You heard about that guy that he built the rocket to prove that it was flat, and he blew himself up.
Yes.
Died. Yeah.
So that kind of stuff. Yeah, I have no problem with that, right? Like, literally no problem.
But by your argument, you're kind of saying that you do. Like, you're saying somebody in the government should have stopped that guy from building the rocket because he killed himself. That's kind of what you're saying.
I mean, we didn't know he was going to kill himself, right? Like, come on. Like, that's a bit of a stretch.
We don't know enough about COVID to know that somebody that takes ivermectin is going to kill themselves. There's been studies that say that it's actually pretty helpful. So for you to just speak authoritatively on this,
I'm not an expert.
You guys, okay, so we got a 70% agreement, and you guys in your like percentage agreements is like, this is not good.
Isn't this how the game works? I thought
we're gonna move on to the last point. Ryan, this question is for Josh. Can we agree that A, if Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation that could physically harm or even kill someone, and B, that information is in just a single episode of his podcast, then C, that episode should be censored by Spotify?
And I know Josh is already saying, no, I don't agree. Give me a second. Let me see.
Ludicrous.
I know. Okay, so on to Joe Rogan.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. On to Joe Rogan's specific case. I get that he's popular. I know a lot of people like him. When I watched the UFC a decade ago or so, I liked him as an announcer, and I think his comedy can be pretty funny. Like, legit, I think he's funny. I cannot listen to his podcast, and I tried. I really did. I listened to a couple of episodes. The reason I can't is because Joe Rogan regularly spreads misinformation of all sorts. He is not an expert on most scientific topics, and Josh is saying he admits this, that's fine. On health-related topics, he's not, or really on almost anything. Martial arts potentially being the exception because he actually is pretty good at this and he's spent a lot of time doing it. So I would grant.
I was watching an episode 2 nights ago where I just stumbled upon with Dan Aykroyd talking about the crystal skulls, like the alien that have been placed by aliens all over the planet.
See?
Clearly, he's all over the place, right?
He's all over the place.
I agree.
He's all over the place.
He's exploring everything.
Yes. I read and contribute to the scientific literature. That is literally my job. When I hear people spouting off misinformation, it drives me bonkers, and I cannot support that. Given that Joe Rogan regularly shares misinformation, he is not on a major social media platform that could just minimize the spread of his podcast. The only real solution is to censor him, and I'm going to get to specifics on what I mean here. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that Joe Rogan should be deplatformed or canceled. Okay, I'm not saying that. If he wants to focus on entertaining people, which he is good at, then great. I have no problem with him just entertaining people. If he wants to interview celebrities and movie stars and opine on things that don't have the potential to hurt or kill people, even better. I could care less. It's a benign podcast that is doing no harm. But if he is going to spread misinformation that could hurt or kill people, I do think that's crossing the line. And I just said, this is a gray area. Spotify may be making millions of dollars off of Joe Rogan, but is that money worth the lives of people who die because they listen to Joe Rogan and his fake experts? And I'm not saying that Malone is a fake expert. He platforms people who probably shouldn't be platformed all the time. But again, we've talked about that. That's fine. I'm glad I'm not the CEO that has to make that decision, but I know what I would decide. I would censor Joe Rogan. And by censor, all I mean is let's fact check him. Let's attach a warning message or maybe even edit some of the content. I'm not saying deplatform Joe Rogan. I'm not saying cancel Joe Rogan. I'm saying we could do a little bit more to say, you know what, just a warning to some of our listeners this episode, but there's some information on here that hasn't been validated by, scientists.
Yeah,
that kind of information.
You said take it, like, I thought you said take it down, but you're saying, yeah, you'd be okay with like a warning message at the beginning.
That's all I mean by censorship, is literally like, put a warning on here that you're going to hear some stuff that has not been validated.
Josh?
Thomas Sowell said the most basic question is not what is best, but who shall decide what is best. Who is going to decide what is harmful for Joe Rogan's podcast? Who? Who's the qualified expert that's going to go through all the crazy various range of topics that he covers and is going to say, nope, that's misinformation? Who's the expert? Who gets to decide? That's the whole point. Who gets to decide this, Ryan? Who gets to decide where we get our information from?
Do I get to answer, or are you just going to keep yelling?
Yes, I'm going to keep yelling because it's so frustrating you don't see this. Who gets to decide?
So here, I literally had this conversation earlier today with my wife, who also has a PhD and works in public health, right? She's in the College of Public Health at her university. There is a person at her university, I'm not going to name names, that's fine, but he is a virologist. This is his job. This is what he does. He's published lots and lots of work on this. And I said, I wonder if Josh is going to like make this argument. And we had a little conversation. I said, you know what? I bet this guy who's on the news all the time talking about COVID, because this is what he does. He deals with infectious diseases. He's a virologist. He would go through Joe Rogan's episode and point out all the factual errors for $5,000. I guarantee he would do that for $5,000. Would just point this out and say, you should check out this. This doesn't seem accurate. Here's more accurate information on this. You can find experts who would fact check this.
Because he has a PhD, he'll be right about everything, even though he's not nearly as qualified as Robert Malone.
Okay, Josh, do you get what you just said? You're saying PhDs don't matter and that we shouldn't listen to anybody. You should only listen to yourself.
You're never wrong in your areas of expertise. You're never wrong.
Experts are wrong. Experts are wrong.
Thank you. Okay.
So they're just why less wrong. Information? They're less wrong than non-experts. That's what makes them experts.
Great. But you're still wrong. So who's fact checking you?
No, but
who's fact checking the fact checker?
You're literally going black and white. Stop with the freaking black and white thinking. Just because somebody is wrong sometimes doesn't mean they're always wrong.
Isn't this the beauty of like Rotten Tomatoes, right? Where it's an aggregate of a whole bunch of critics, right? And
absolutely
you get this like, well, okay, 60% like it, 40% didn't, right? We had plenty of dissenters, but enough people liked it, therefore we know the movie's decent, right? And you can start trusting that.
The critics are always wrong about what the public's going to like.
Yeah,
like
well, they even have a public.
I don't know about
they
that.
even have a public.
On Rotten Tomatoes, they're like always wrong.
No. Sometimes there are movies that you're like, yeah, that was really bad, and the critics said that was really bad. Sometimes they're wrong on, they're right a lot. But okay, so let's get 10 people.
Right.
With how much Joe Rogan is making off of this podcast, how hard would it be to get 10 people, pay them each $1,500? I bet they would listen to an hour of a podcast and and you just have to get 10 recognized experts in the area.
Right. Yeah.
How hard is that? Right. And suddenly you have fact checking, and we have 80% who are fine with it.
Then we need to fact check your fact checkers, right? Because we will not put anything out in the public domain that could be harmful at all. We have to be 100% correct about everything.
I didn't say that. I said kind of where you're messages on there. No, I said put a message on there. This has not been validated. That's fine.
This is so silly.
Josh,
silly.
No, it's not.
It is.
Fine. You think it's silly. That's great. What did I say? If Joe Rogan wants to talk about what lipstick or what music or smoking a joint or whatever, even technology, if he wants, I don't want to censor any of that. You want to censor
anybody that's not an expert in their field. That's basically what you're saying.
Talk about whatever you want. That's not going to harm people. Right. That's the line that I drew.
Who decides what harms people, though? Because you can make any argument that if he talks about UFC, well, that harms people because that's promoting kids to go and fight. That'll get them hurt. Okay, who gets to decide?
No,
that's the problem.
I think you're being pretty ridiculous.
Well, no, Josh's point is 100% valid, right? And that's the big argument that that
everything can be harmful.
That a lot of conservatives have about Facebook is that all the conservatives are getting kicked off when liberals are not getting kicked off, right? And it's a valid argument. And I do like, I mean, like I think the crowdsourcing thing I think is the best thing you can do, because you're never going to get, you're always going to have this issue, right? And I like Wikipedia. I like their, like, the management of Wikipedia, of like, people can go on and change stuff, and then you just go back and change it back. And right, it's just like you got people just on there doing stuff. And but I mean, generally you get pretty good information off of Wikipedia, right? There's enough people that were like, oh no, that's totally bogus, that take that down and correct it again.
Yeah, but they demand people provide evidence. That's what they demand.
They're citing stuff.
You have to cite your sources. You have to provide evidence. That's why Wikipedia actually is reliable, is because they demand that. You've seen it before, right? Citation needed. They'll put those in there. If you're going to make a claim, you got to back it up.
I'm just making the point that
citations
anyone
when he makes claims.
Oh, please.
I'm just making the point
just admitted you don't listen to him.
I listened to 2 podcasts and I could not stand him.
Oh, you're an expert then. Then you are an expert on Joe Rogan.
Wow, Josh, this is just loads of cheap shots and bullshit.
It's not though. You're maybe we're just not getting each other tonight, but
you guys are not.
I mean, you're not answering the question. I mean, you can aggregate this out as far as you want. If you're going to say, Josh,
you don't agree? No,
absolutely not. Absolutely not. You should never say. The only time you should censor somebody and limit their speech is if they're fomenting violence. If they're actually actively calling to hurt somebody. No, it's not, because that's definable. If you're actively saying, let's go get this guy, that's fomenting violence. What you're saying is, well, he's giving bad information about healthcare, so that could hurt people, so we should censor that. Those are 2 very different things. That is not what you said. Not at all. And this is provided for in the Constitution, right? Or not the Constitution. The First Amendment says, you can't restrict speech unless they're fomenting violence. That's what it's referring to.
No, it doesn't say that, right? It says we have freedom of speech. It's later court cases that have drawn the limits on what that means.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. But that's what I'm getting at. And you can't conflate those 2 things. Just saying somebody's life's at risk because somebody made a misstatement, that's not fomenting violence. Those are not the same things.
We are not agreeing tonight, and that's okay. It's a good debate. I like it. I think the points have been great.
Tom's been loving this one. Ryan and I are both mad and fired up, and Tom's yes.
No, I've been getting pushed around, swayed both ways. I think that's really good. Ryan, can we do
like our books good next time? Like something that we can just agree on.
No, they're not.
Our kitten's cute. Like, come on.
I will burn that whole shelf behind me.
Ryan, do you think you can make a brief closing argument?
Sway me. I will be open-minded right here. Sway me to what you're saying. I will listen.
Closing argument. I think it's like wrapped up in my point. So I really dislike a culture that rejects expertise because they're experts. That bugs me. It bugs me a lot.
Anti-intellectual.
Yes, it's just an anti-intellect, and it's rampant in our society. There was a great book from the 1950s by David Hostetler, who wrote a book on anti-intellectualism in American life. It is pervasive. I think it's really problematic. And I established, like, we don't do it everywhere, right? We want pilots who know how to fly. We want surgeons who know how to cut into people. Like, we want certain experts. But when there's something that we're like, no, I kind of disagree with you, then we dismiss people's expertise. And that really bugs me. And I think Josh and I are really close when it comes to freedom of speech. Like, we've had this discussion before. We totally agree. And I really have no problem with people saying, like I said earlier, pretty much anything they want to say. Obviously, you can't foment violence. I think that's a problem. I think it's a grayer area when people are saying things like, hey, you don't get vaccines. Vaccines are bad. Like, and I don't mean COVID. I mean, like, generally vaccines. That has the potential to harm people. And I think that's problematic. Am I saying deplatform them, cancel them? I'm not saying that. I'm saying let's be careful. There are some things that can be harmful universally. And I get Josh's point. Who gets to decide what is harmful? That's a valid point. I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that's a valid point. I think I would just be a little bit more cautious in saying, like, oh, anything goes. The Wild West is a pretty scary place when anything goes.
Nice. Josh?
Wow.
You ready?
Like, you're pretty hesitant to call on me here.
Well, yeah. Did it work?
You are. I'll just say it. You're foolish if you just utterly dismiss the advice of experts. I 100% agree with that. People go to school for a long time to get really good at a certain thing. There's nothing wrong with that. You should listen to people that are experts in their field. That being said, I went to a doctor because I had stomach pains, and he diagnosed me and said, "I'm sure this is the problem. Take these pills, you'll be right as rain." Didn't fix it. It was something completely different. I went home after they ran some tests, and I looked at the tests and figured out why I was having problems. The doctor was completely off, and it turns out this is the same doctor, I found out later, that probably killed Ryan and I's brother Mark. Okay.
Nice.
He's an expert. He has a doctorate in medicine, right? He's an MD.
He has an MD, not a doctorate in medicine.
Okay, thank you. But you would consider him an expert. Was he right?
No, experts can be wrong.
Experts can be wrong. Okay. And this is the whole issue here. I want all the information out on the table so I can see it, so I can make my own informed decision. I want to give a doctor my informed consent because I know everything that's going on. If you start censoring information and keeping information from people, even if it is silly information, you're denying them the opportunity to make their own decisions. You're denying them the opportunity to be informed, even if especially if you don't agree with what's being said, but even if it's wrong, you should still have access to that information. It makes no sense to me that are experts, whether they're expert or not, or whether they're right or they're wrong. And I'll agree with Ryan, most of the time the experts are going to be right. That doesn't mean they're always going to be right. Mm-hmm. So whose responsibility is it if they're wrong and you listen to them? Okay, people need to make their own decisions. End of story. And I already, we lost Tom. I guess Tom was sick of hearing me talk about this. We might have to edit him back in. He bailed. Sick of me.
Oh, his laptop died. Uh-oh. Maybe we are done. Oh, I'll be back in 1 minute. He said he's coming back.
All right, we can wait.
Yeah.
I can wait for 1 minute for Tommy's take.
Yeah. So again, it's like we agree almost entirely. I'm in the same boat with you where I want all the information so I can make informed decisions. They came over knowing that Debbie works in public health and said, "Hey, are you guys getting these shots? Because we're hearing lots of information about this and we just don't know what to make of it." And we said, of course, we're going to get our shots, right? Like we went and got vaccinated. We absolutely encourage you to get vaccinated. And they listened to us, right? And who knows, 20 years down the road, maybe that was the wrong decision. I have no idea what's going to happen with COVID at this point. Things are weird. But props to them for recognizing like they just don't have the expertise to make these kinds of decisions. That's not their cup of tea. And if I gave them, honestly, if I gave them the 50 latest articles that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine on
They're
COVID,
not even going to read them, let alone understand them.
You see my point, right? Like, so just giving people tons of information doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make the right decision because they may not know how to interpret
giving them the agency to make the decision. That's the important part. Because are you going to be responsible for him if something bad comes from this? Is it your fault because you recommended he get the stab?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, right? So he's responsible because he went
decision.
To an expert.
I didn't force the shot into his arm,
and he made the decision. That's the key. When you censor people, you're saying, "Well, you're assuming responsibility for these people." If you had just told him you have to get this, or you're a fool, and you browbeat him into doing it, well, then he can't take responsibility for that. No. People need to be responsible for their decisions, and you can't be responsible for a decision if you're forced into it.
Don't give them a decision.
If there's vaccine mandates.
Welcome back, Tom.
Sorry.
So
Ryan and I, since you left, we have actually changed our minds and we have agreed on everything. 100% down the board.
I'm the problem.
Oh, geez. So Josh had like one sentence left in his wrap up, and then we wanted Tommy's take. So Do you remember what your sentence was, Josh, or no?
No.
All right.
I'll just reiterate. Where are you just going to cut back into right here?
Sure, I can cut back in wherever.
All right. Well, edit together however you want. I'll just reiterate a final time. People should be free to make their own decisions, and they should be free to have access to all the information available. You know, I get Ryan is worried about people that might be stupid. There are stupid people. I'm sorry, but who gets to decide? That's ultimately what it comes down to. I think people should decide for themselves. I don't think anybody else should decide for you. I think you should decide.
Tommy's take.
Yeah, my take. Okay, I actually really enjoyed the points that were brought up tonight. And so there's a bunch of stuff I agree with you on both of you. So yeah, first off, yeah, I do think the right has sort of an anti-intellectual bias, and I think that's mainly with the Trump supporters. It's like this the rejecting sort of any kind of science thing. It's sort of a subculture thing, and I don't agree with it. And when we were talking about, one of the other podcasts, we were talking about Hitler, and there was very much the Nazi party, the main people in the Nazi party were just your everyday blue collar workers who had this opportunity to rise to power. And it was actually the experts, a lot of like your what are they called? Nobel laureates and things like that. They left the country. Things started getting weird. They're like, we're out of here. And a lot of them went to the US, but and so it was, and there was that other point, Josh, you had that, somebody played a video. I think it was Josh. You played the video of like truth and like to like attack truth. And that's how that
was my video, but yes.
Is that yours? Mm-hmm. Yeah. That people came to power. And I thought that was so good that like, that's so true, right? Of like, this is true. No, it's not. Right. And you can just like, it helps you, that chaos kind of helps you like do anything you want because nobody knows what truth is anymore. And like in the old days, right. I agree. And like a lot of people aren't like, it's hard enough to get people to study choices for voting, right? People don't do it, right? They don't look up the sides or anything like that. They just like, oh, that guy's good looking, I'll vote for him. And that's why we had Walter Cronkite on the news, and she would tell you how things were. And I think in that day that was a different era, right? And the country was a little bit more united, and they could agree on a general consensus. And that, I think that's sort of gone. And so, but that kind of brings us to Josh's point of like, well, who is the trusted source? Oh, it's Fauci, right? Or no, it's not. And there's, I do agree that I think the left has been like, no, this is what's right. And there's been a very much a get on board, wear the mask, get the vaccine and everything. And anyone who disagreed is a heretic. And I do think I got the vaccine. I have family members who haven't, and that's, whatever. I do think that they're being dumb, but like, I have not pushed them at all. I don't like, that's your decision. Those are your consequences. And I respect that. And there needs to be voices. But it's like, it's this sort of, who is the expert? And I think that's exactly what Josh was saying of like, who is the person who decides what is right for me, right? Who is the fact checker, is such a big part of like who does have the final say on truth, right? I think that's the big argument of like who is right. And like that's such an interesting thing, right? Because you always have dissenters. Like, wasn't it 9 out of 10 doctors thought cigarettes were bad? And like, oh, there's one guy one doctor thinks it's good, right? It's like, oh, okay. But there's always some guy.
Very good, right?
Example. And it's like, and that's hard. We are a divided country. And so they're always going to pick their voices that are truth. And I don't even know how to solve that, right? But it's a problem, right? It's a big problem. And until we can kind of reconcile with each other, it's like we're both, we have a country that is divided, and we're like, we see I've never seen a country that loves the country so much and thinks the solution to the country is doing the exact opposite of what the other side thinks, right? That's such an interesting thing. Like, the only way to fix the country is to do the opposite of what they want to do, right? That's such an interesting dichotomy we live in. And
but the weird part, sorry to interrupt Tommy's take, is as we've seen on this podcast, we generally agree more than we disagree.
Yes.
There's just these weird things that drive wedges between us where we get so mad at each other and go, they're completely wrong. Well, no, they're actually 90% in agreement with what I think.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, I agree. And this is sort of like to Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, right? Where like men and women are, for the most part, are the same. They're very much the same, but it's only when you have overlap, it's only on the fringes that you see the distinctions, right? And he's like, so the majority of men are in prison, right? And that's because the most violent people are most likely going to be men, right? And
on the extremes. Yeah.
On the extremes, exactly. And so and I think, and it's, and this is what we've talked about a lot. It's the extreme voices in our country that are very loud right now and are pulling us apart. And it's the centrists that need to try and hold things together. And so but it's interesting. It's gone into all facets of our life, and it's truth, right? Which is like the most important thing there is like who is right, who is true. And that's like the biggest fight we're having right now. And it's such an interesting, we're not going to win it, right? Because it's like, because no one.
What do you mean? This podcast is going to win this fight,
right?
That's the point. Yes.
Settled science.
But at the rate that we're picking up subscribers, we'll have that platform we need in like 1.2 million years,
something like that.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan should be worried. We're coming for him.
Joe Rogan should run for president. Yeah. Anyway,
we got this.
But I do, and like my final thought is, I do think Joe Rogan is he is supposed to be centrist, right? And I think that's part of his big appeal, right? Is like, we don't know who truth is, so they're flocking to Joe Rogan because he seems to be kind of in the middle of the road. And
he'll listen to everybody.
That's
to everybody, why I like
right? him. And you don't feel like you're being actively deceived by him at the very least, right?
Yeah, he's trying his best. He's not a genius, but he doesn't purport to be a genius, and people identify with that. Whereas you have these people that say, I'm the expert, you should listen to me. That doesn't resonate with people. He's an everyman saying, I'm trying my best and I'm going to listen to everybody. That's why he has 11 million subscribe or 11 million views per podcast. That resonates with people. He's trying.
Interesting.
And Dr. What's his bucket? Malone actually said when they started the podcast, he said, the reason I like you is because you are trying to unite the country. You're trying to bring people together on what they agree with. That's why he beat us to the punch, apparently. That's why people like him. That's why he's the most powerful media figure.
Well, but he's becoming sort of a conservative darling, though, right? And that, I think that's, I wonder,
he's getting pushed there by the left because he's he's left of center.
I think he's getting pushed because he's getting attacked. He's getting pushed into. I do think he's getting pushed into the right.
It's the same thing that happened with Jordan Peterson. Both of them are liberals,
left of center.
Yeah, they're both liberals. Like Joe is very liberal on some of his social issues, but he's getting pushed to the right, and both of them have become, like you said, conservative darlings. But neither of them are conservative. It's
right.
Crazy.
Well, Bill Maher. He's getting he's getting called out a lot by and it's almost
super liberal.
It's almost like you take, I mean, if we go on, that's like J.K. Rowling, right? Totally liberal, right? And then she said one thing about trans, and they're like, kill her, right?
Burn her at the stake.
I don't know. Do you agree with that, Ryan? That it's interesting. I do feel like there's this sort of like, this is the narrative, and if you're not with the narrative, then you're a heretic, and that's sort of what I felt.
Well, I mean, it's not like that doesn't happen. I think that's hurting credibility. It certainly happens on the right. I mean, right now, if you're not with Trump, you are in trouble in the Republican Party, right? Again, Republican Party, not conservative.
Right.
And this is why, when it comes to, and I know you guys hate bringing this up, right? But the January 6th attack on the Capitol,
right?
Very quickly, everybody, that day, all the Republicans are like, this is horrendous. I can't believe this happened. This is the worst thing ever. 2 weeks later, they're like, yeah, let's kind of just, that didn't happen. Not a big deal, because they know that if they go after Trump,
I just don't think it's nearly as big a deal as you do. That's
which is fine. What it is. But they all were like, let's move past it.
Well, and honestly, here's the thing that worries me. I read something yesterday that talked about a guy who said he was there. I think he got convicted. I don't know, but he said it gives him street cred that he was there. And then
really,
and there are political, it's like a political prisoner, right? Who then comes out and like Mandela, right? Or something like that. Then he becomes the president. It's honestly, it feels a little like that. Because I agree with Josh. I think the culture is changing, and I do think because Bill Maher was saying this, that the Democrats have become like an elitist party, and I think the Republicans are going to kill it in the midterms, and I'm worried that it's going to be a lot of like really far rights that are going to like really take control, and really. Yeah. And I'm worried about that, right? That we're even going to get stauncher in those camps. And we're going to be like, oh, were you at the Capitol on January 6th? Well, it's like a badge of honor, right? I'm worried about that. And I'm very much.
I'm voting for the Buffalo hat guy. Doesn't matter if he's running or not.
Chewbacca?
My vote.
The Buffalo hat guy.
Yeah.
The shaman. Right. Oh my gosh. On that note, can we end this episode?
Yes. Sorry. So that was I went on a little diatribe there, but that was great. Good episode, a lot of really good points I think brought up by both sides. This is one of my favorites. I really enjoyed this one. So anyway, we'll talk to y'all next time.
Josh, we may not always agree when it comes to politics, even though we're trying, but there is one thing we agree on. There is only one way to clean up after going to the bathroom, and that's with a Lux bidet.
I've been a proud owner of a Lux bidet for years. I have literally owned a Lux Neo 320 since 2013. That's the warm water model. Talk about happy, fun, poopy time. When I leave the bathroom, I know I'm clean and ready to talk politics in a civilized manner.
Exactly. Using a toilet without a bidet is about as uncivilized as it gets. Civil conversations demand civil hygiene practices.
And that is why our listeners should get themselves a Lux bidet.
And just to be clear, Lux is not supporting one side or the other in this podcast. They support civil conversations and clean butts.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Finding Common Battlegrounds. The music is by Ben Sound. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and not those of their employers. For more information or more episodes, you can find us at findingcommonbattlegrounds.com.
But your definition of truth on some things would be different than mine. We can agree on probably 99% of things, but we wouldn't agree on everything. You know that.
Right. And I think the whole point of the podcast is that we're trying to find where we can agree. I mean, that's literally the point, is that we're trying to find where we can agree. But I think, you've changed what you were saying, which I think is helpful. That you were saying it's the primacy of the individual, not to determine what is true, but to make decisions and take responsibility. I'm okay with that. That's fine. Well, no, but I don't think the individual is the sole arbiter of what is true, because if you do that, like I said, you're looping all the way around to make believe. Nothing is true. What I was saying.
Well, I think you're looping back to around anarchy.
Yeah.
Of like no one can respect. There's no law because no one agrees on anything, and therefore we're all just individuals in this world. And
no, that's not what I'm saying, because there's a philosophical connotation when you say the primacy of the individual. We're talking about, the evolution of society, where it was the primacy of the monarch, primacy of the king. And then you go to socialism or something where it's the primacy of the state. And the West was built on the foundational principle that it's the primacy of the individual. That's what I'm referring to when I say that. I'm not sure how we got to that area where I was saying the individual defines their own truth, because I hate that term when people say live your own truth. That's freaking bullcrap. So I think I wasn't being very clear if that's what I was intimating. I'm talking about the philosophical connotation that the West was built on this foundational principle that the individual is the most important component of society.
Well, basically, individuals have rights. Individuals have rights.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what that's referring to.
I think in that we create a government where we elect individuals, right? We elect people, right? That they should contain some of us in everyone that is elected.
But they should be fighting for individual rights. That's their job.
And those elected people. So we have to have some kind of hierarchy, just like Josh is saying, right? It's the king, it's a whatever, and ours is these elected officials. But what's going on? But like I keep going back to like we've created these two different realities, two different truths, and it's like we are a nation divided, in that like
it's terrifying.
Yeah, it's two totally different cultures, and they both follow a different. I've never seen it where it's like, what do you do with borders? Right, close it down. Nope. Totally keep it open, right? That's what's best. That's what's best for the
Nothing
country.
In the middle.
Completely different, right? And you're like, both are what's going to save the country. You're like, that's so strange. Like, I don't get it, right? It's strange.
Well, my thought as you say that, because you're talking about the hierarchy that we elect these individuals to be the government, and they're supposed to be fighting for individual rights, but more and more, they're not the ones that are actually deciding policy. It's corporate entities that are generally deciding policy, and it comes back to money and follow the money and who's deciding this crap. And you look at the media. This is why I always harp on the media. I think they're the main wedge that's driving the two sides apart, and they're doing it. Why? Because of ratings.
Money. No,
they make money.
I disagree with both of those. I believe media is a facilitator, and companies are a byproduct of human sentiment. I've always believed that, and I always will. Nobody is a company can exist or not exist, and it won't stop people from doing what they're going to do. And prohibition proved that a long time ago. We'll just do what we were going to do regardless. And so people will put a company up and take the money, right? Always. But that's like prostitution and everything, right? It's illegal. I can't have a company. No, it's gonna happen, right?
It's gonna happen.
And so companies are just a byproduct of what we were doing. And I think it's actually this kind of funny, because Ryan, I think it comes back to what you're saying, Josh. It's the individuals. Half the nation is creating a reality, and half the nation is creating a different reality. And the companies and all are supporting that. And
catering to it. Yeah, you can be right.
Catering to it, yes. But it actually is the individuals that are. We've just created two cultures. It's so interesting. I don't know. That's strange. And two realities that cannot coexist. They cannot coexist because they are two different realities, and they're having
it's a culture war.
Yeah, and it's going to determine. It's going to have huge effects.
I keep coming back to Rule 8, Jordan Peterson's first book. Always tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And he talks about in that chapter, which is so fascinating to me, that if you lie enough, you actually alter your own reality. So you start to believe whatever it is you're telling yourself, and your perception of reality actually changes, which is really interesting to think about, because I've seen that with people. I've seen people that tell lies, and all of a sudden they don't know what reality is. My recollection of something is completely different than theirs, and maybe I'm the one that's misleading myself in lying, but that's true. As far as I can tell, what Jordan Peterson is saying there, it's true. If you lie to yourself enough, your perception of reality changes, and maybe there's an element of that, because we just can't agree on some issues. And if what Ryan is saying is true, and I believe it is, there is a truth out there, but we can't agree on what it is.
Right.
That you got to be quiet.
Yeah, I mean, at heart, that's why I like the idea in principle of just getting to baseline things, right? So can we get all the way down and drive down to this? Like, we agree here. This is the part that we actually agree on.
This.
Right. And
that's
then
why you convinced me to do this.
That's how I did. Yeah. That's the goal, right? Like, there are fundamental truths that we can agree on. These things are real. And then from there, we can have our different takes, right? And I think we're always going to have our different takes, because politically, we just don't agree on some fundamental ideas. But can we get at the truth that underlies those ideas? And I think by getting there, we increase the odds that at some level we can start to mend that divide. And again, we do this all the time by saying, like, we actually agree on more than we disagree on. We actually really do. I mean, this episode wasn't a good illustration of that, but I think generally we do. We just have to dig deep.
Here's my fear. How long did it take for you and I to reconcile and to get to the point where we could even discuss this? It took us years, and it was difficult to get there. How is the country going to get there? because it's getting worse, and there are voices out there. I mean, I mentioned it with Joe Rogan. He's trying to listen to both sides. He's trying to give his take, but now you have one half of the country destroying him because he's not towing their line. So that's my fear. Even though we're trying to do exactly what Ryan said, and it's such a noble goal in my opinion, that to find the truth we can agree on, I just don't see it happening.
Gosh, you cloned yourself
4 times.
Yeah, that one especially.
That one looks just like you. Yeah,
it's bizarre how similar he is to me. Temperament and everything. Everything he does is me.
The one on your lap is not you.
That's true.
Yeah.
I don't know who she is. She might be the mailman's.